Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kareem Bowen, and welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. And I'm in the studio today with Mark Bassett, who also sits in as my reoccurring co-host whenever he's not traveling across the world. What's going on, Mark?
Not too much. Just glad to be in town. Glad to be here with you. I join you from a far and away as well, Kareem.
You do that. You
yes,
do.
Yeah.
You bring us bi-coastal updates on what's happening, from coast to coast, and we appreciate that. John B. in the place to be, our producer, is here. John, how are you today?
Hello. Doing good.
Awesome. So I am excited to be in the studio with you guys today. I've just had a crazy week. I don't know about you guys, but it just seems like, I don't know, El Nino or El Nina in California is blowing all kinds of crazy stuff all over the place. And this week has been no exception for me. I don't know what your weeks has been like. Mark,
I'm retired, man.
Mark,
I've been working out, I don't know.
We were talking about you bringing the kids in for your wife's birthday.
Yes, they were all here. We had a great party. It was a lot of fun. Good crowd. It was a blast. It was she loved it, obviously, having all 7 kids. We don't get all 7 together. I think the last time all 7 were together was 2021, summer of 2021.
Wow.
In Breckenridge. Yeah.
So was that the ski trip?
Well, it was in the summer. Yeah, but
was that the trip to was this Breckenridge,
Colorado in the
yeah.
summer? It was in the summer, and about half the people got altitude sickness.
Yeah, I remember.
I'll never do that again.
I remember having that conversation.
Yeah.
Well, so was she able to? Was this a surprise, or did
no?
You eventually
can't
have to
surprise that.
Yeah, I was just how do you surprise kids coming home?
Yeah, no, you can't. So
when did you finally let her know what was going on?
Oh, she knew all along.
Okay,
I mean, that I was planning this party, and we were trying to get all the kids home. So it was going to be impossible to keep it a secret.
Okay, so it was a great success, though.
It was a huge success.
All right, once again, happy belated birthday out there to Mary. For dealing with this guy to my right in the studio. We're glad that you enjoyed yourselves. And to all the little Bassets who are now filtering their ways back to the various parts of the country.
Yeah, the last one left yesterday back to Boston.
Is that the youngest one?
No, he works locally for a company, but he lives in Boston. So anyway, the rest left on Sunday. The 2 in California left Monday, and then he left Thursday.
Okay, Mark, it must be great to have everyone home. Like
it
the
is.
First day is probably like, oh, this is bliss.
Yep.
Does that feeling wane over time?
Yeah.
It's not. You don't have 2 kids. You got 7 kids that are all coming home, different personalities, and
I mean, it does. In all honesty, I mean, again, I'm 61. We got married right out of school. I was 1 year older, so I was 23. She was 21. She was pregnant within 2 months. Over the next 14 years, we had 7 kids.
Wow.
And so we really never had alone time, really.
Other than now's your alone time.
Now's our alone time. So it's great seeing the kids.
No, you had alone time, but the alone time ended up with 7 kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was brief snippets of alone time followed by a kid. But anyway, so I actually like being an empty nester now.
Okay.
But it's great having them all. But if they're there a couple of weeks, it gets a little.
Yeah. I could imagine. Okay, we love you, but it's time for you to go. You're putting shoes at the door. Hey, kids, what direction are the shoes going? Out the door. It's time to leave. But no, I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
Yep.
John, what's going on in your life?
Well, not necessarily my life, but it is affecting me. Our wonderful news director here at WSGW, Ann Williams, today is her last day as we're recording this.
Oh, yes.
So those of you who are listening on the radio on Sunday, we just want to say thank you to Ann, and I'm going to be picking up a lot of the slack that's left over.
He is becoming the slack master. But no, I think it's very appropriate for us to give a salute to Ann. She has been with the station for a very long time. And what was the name?
Listen to the Missus.
Listen to the Missus. And I know that she's been doing news here. And being, an African American man coming in, and it was a great thing to see her here as a woman of color, being a part of the process and making great things happen. And those of you who are hearing this, you probably have heard her voice and didn't know that you were actually listening to her. It's funny because when we were in recording, sometimes she's in the studio behind us, and when she's talking and I'm listening to her record the news, it is a very interesting thing to be able to witness, and how she just reads without any issue. I'm like, I did the whole riff thing, but I still need a whole lesson of Hooked on Phonics or something, because I'm not as good as she was. So we want to celebrate her.
There you go.
In this moment.
Never mind.
Celebrate. Oh, you see what I'm saying? Mark, I'm trying, bro. I'm trying, right? But so we certainly salute her on the time that she's been here with the station. And I turned around and just gave her a wave just a second ago. But let's talk about what's hot off the press. There's a lot that I want to get to, because we do have some interesting dialogue, and we'll talk about it in perspective. And I just really want to just talk and share with this. I think this is an informative piece, but having this conversation, I get to talk with white folks about some things that are very, I think, interesting as it relates to, Black history or African history. And I'm interested on perspectives, and I want to challenge you guys to be a part of that conversation as well. But the crazy situation that I thought was crazy, and this actually makes like huge news, that the Boston Celtics head coach, Ime Udoka, I think is how you pronounce it. He has been suspended for an entire year.
Surprised he's not fired.
Well,
most companies,
I think that's what's
fired.
I think that's what's going to happen next. But this is the thing. I look at this situation with him, and I'm like going, is anybody surprised? I mean, he's not the first person to be in this position. And I'll tell you this, because working in the NBA, a lot of the relationships I thought were suspect, but these people spend so much time around each other. They're not
like any workplace. I mean, there's relationships in every workplace.
Yeah. And so we like sports. We like this. Now, the crazy thing about this situation, and this is the thing that's interesting, is that this guy has been engaged to Nia Long. And if you guys know who Nia Long,
I don't. I'm gonna have to Google.
Oh, yeah, you got Google Nia Long,
okay.
and you tell me Nia Long. But this just goes to tell you that it doesn't matter really how fine you are, because Nia Long in the Brothers Playbook, she is one of the finest sisters out there. He has cuffed, or that's the term we use, cuff, when you make him your wife.
Okay.
He has cuffed one of the most very attractive woman. She is a self-made woman. She is an actress. She's done major shows. She has great Hollywood credits, and he's cheating on her.
Well, I mean, it's the guy, the Adam Levine from Maroon 5, who's Victoria's Secret. I mean, it's got nothing to do with that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I'm like, dude, bro, like, what's the deal? But the fact that this makes such huge news is absolutely crazy to me. Thank you guys for tuning in our social media stream. Absolutely, she's absolutely gorgeous. And I'm not sure.
Why does it surprise you? It's big news. This is always big news.
No, it's not big news.
Yes, it is. Look at the guy, Adam Levine's huge news.
But I mean, really, is that really big news? Okay,
well, should it be? No,
I think
but
what's
it
big
always
news is that he's still, like you said, he's not fired immediately. I do understand how this happens, but I'll tell you what is big news about that particular story is that there were some indications. People thought, okay, it's the vice president's wife that he slept with, or someone who's one of the women that work in a higher up, and they started harassing this woman because he was fired. And so this woman is getting targeted and all this crazy press, and it's not even the right woman, the one that they thought it was.
Gosh.
And so her response was, wait a minute, how is the team going to protect the women that work here? Because everyone wants to know. It's none of their business for the most part. But when you see these situations, he's blasted. So they want to know who this woman is. But this is a perfect example of how we have to make sure that when we report these stories, that we're giving accurate information. Because the woman they thought that it was, she's like, my life is being ruined. I'm getting death threats because we got rid of this guy. Not that he was the greatest person in the world, but what I think one of the issues is is that he is, one of, the black coaches that leads in the NBA. My personal thing is lead by example. Men of all ages and colors and races experience and are part of infidelity. But come on, bro, Nia Long. And those of you who listen, go Google her, go to her IMDb, I think it's what it's called, and check her out. I mean, she's a very smart woman. What does a woman have to do? This is where I was coming. What does a woman have to do, men, in this time to really keep the attention of men as it relates to, infidelity or fidelity?
This isn't a one-way street, by the way.
No, but I'm just
cheat on men all the time.
But I get that, bro.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is, in this particular situation, a woman she's together. She has her career together. She has a life together. She does have one other child, but they have a child together. That's the other thing. They got a 10-year-old kid together. So what does a woman have to do to really entertain us and keep our attention?
Well, we don't know what their relationship is like.
Exactly.
That's
you don't
the
know
other
what was
thing.
going on between
This
them.
is what their relationship is like. He's an NBA coach and she is a Hollywood celebrity who is fine.
Yep.
That's all you got to know. Like,
Well,
is there anything
look
else?
at the divorce rate in Hollywood.
So I'm asking the question
in general, not that specific case.
Yeah. But
Well,
like,
I think
what
it
there's
depends
and,
on the individual.
and it's just not this, but it happens all the time.
Sure.
Mark, you give us what is it that women must do to keep the attention? I mean, you how many years you touting here, Mark?
We have been together since 1980. We've been started dating in September of 1980.
They've been dating almost as long as we've been alive.
Longer than John. I've been
me.
with
You,
yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. We've been together almost 40 years.
So what does it take
42 years
for a woman to keep the attention of her man so these things don't happen, no matter where she goes, no matter where
I think in any relationship, it's a two-way street. There's got to be a commitment. Attention. It takes a lot of work. So a lot of attention, a lot of work on the relationship, making sure both parties feel like there's still a connection there and intimacy there, both mentally, socially, and physically. It's very easy to drift apart. It's really easy to drift apart, especially when you have a family, you're both working. Like, there are two professional careers where they're on the road a lot. So it's really easy in those situations to lose the intimacy that brought you together. And it's not just physical intimacy, it's emotional intimacy, it's intellectual intimacy. And you've got to work on maintaining that intimacy throughout. And it's really easy when you spend more time at work with another woman or man than you actually do with your spouse to get that intimacy somewhere else.
All right. Yeah, I guess Piolio 95, I'm not sure. Now says, well, a coach almost fired for having an affair, but we have an ex-president doing much more. It's still in a free world. What a world. I'm not sure exactly who you're talking about. I can make a couple
There's
inferences.
been a lot of
when I think about our presidential, are we going to start with Kennedy? Yeah. And work our way down.
Kennedy,
I
Trump,
think it comes with the job.
I'm guessing he's referring to Donald Trump, but yeah,
I wasn't sure if my initial thought was Bill Clinton, but hey, there's a whole list we can go through there when we talk about that, depending on what we're talking. But I just thought that was an interesting thing. The other thing, and I'll tell you this, in terms of professional business women, there is.
By the way, he's fired because he's having an affair with a subordinate.
Who works?
Not somebody. They're not going to fire him for having an affair with someone not associated with the organization. So,
absolutely, and so I get that. The other piece of this, and this is where I'm going, Mark, in terms of someone who works with the establishment, is that for a long time there was, especially in sports, if you're going to be a woman in that industry, that there was only way for you to have upward mobility or advancement, or to really be able to be considered a part of the team. And so it brings to mind those types of things. And I'm not going to say that this is what this was. Like you said, we don't know these people. They are not like our friends. I don't know if you've been hanging out with them or not, John.
Oh yeah, I hang out on the weekends.
On the weekends. Well, first of all, I don't understand how anyone is a Celtics fan. I mean, they still have those.
I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently, fans are really upset about this.
My nephew is a huge Celtics fan.
They are upset about this.
Yeah.
They're hugely upset about this, and I'm
That
trying
he
to
should
figure
be
out.
suspended.
I'm thinking so. I don't know what the issue is.
They're
though.
upset because he was suspended.
Yes.
They're disappointed with him. But I think I'm not a big sports person, but it sounds like he kind of turned the team around a little bit.
And so they didn't want him to go.
Yep.
And so they're like, look, everybody's sleeping with everyone on the planet. So like now, and then we have, and then someone said this, and we were talking about Brett Favre on last week or a week or so ago, whatever it was, when we were talking about how he steals $500 million or $5 million from, the welfare system.
Yeah.
And you don't get this much media attention, but I think that's
not as salacious. It will. I think he's going down.
I think that's what they're doing. They're going to put all their ducks in a row and kind of deal with that situation.
I saw something today. Someone's going to do a plea bargain. And it's going to be bad.
That's not good. That's not good.
I think he's going down.
All right. So anyways, we hope that works out. Nia, if a brother is going to have you as his fiance for 7 years, does it really take that long to say I do? And hopefully it was you saying, hey, I'm going to pause because I'm not sure if I want to go forward. But if it was this joke, now you know what to do with this dude. Kick that curb, that zero to the curb, and get yourself a hero, right? All right. So Donald Trump, this guy, I think that he has the most amazing, there's an uncanny ability that he has to be able to stay relevant. He's not been president for 2 years now. And the only thing that we've talked about since he's not been president is Donald Trump. He needs to put together a PR campaign or a media a team to let people know how they can keep you in the media. This current thing that we're dealing with, we've talked about this a while ago, the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Did I get that right, Mar-a-Lago?
Yes.
Yep.
I think that's correct. All right, so they go in, they find all of these documents, 15 boxes or so. We're now talking about 11,000 odd pages. And 100 odd pages or so. So special master is appointed, which they asked for. They asked for a specific special masters, which is Judge Raymond Deary. And so now we're seeing the special master's he's mastering the situation. He's saying, look, okay, you made all these accusations, prove it. That's not really where I wanted to go. I wanted to talk about that, but I wanted to bring up what is happening. I think that scares me about where we are in our political state. And that is the fact now the piece, not just about, this is unclassified, that stuff will work its way out. But it's now the idea that he's saying what we've seen in the SBI. Oh, the DNA was planted. The cases were planted. There's files that were possibly planted, bringing into suspicion. And I know that you're a conspiracy theorist. I was really thinking about you, John.
Does that surprise you? He brought into suspicion before the election, the validity of the election, basically setting up an argument that if he lost, it was fraud.
Well, I get that. I get that. I can understand that. And I think that people still wonder, like, when I go in there, if I punch the little thing on, does my vote really count? So I think that speaks to that. But what scares me, or what gives me a great sense of pause, is that now he is kind of throwing out the idea, well, I don't know if they planted evidence or they planted files. And this is like the Department
he's guilty
of Justice. And it makes me nervous because I know he's speaking to a fear of a number of people that exists that have issues with government. I'll tell you, in the Black community, he's like, John, I know you're probably right. They've been planting information for a long time. So it makes me have a concern because, once again, we talked about this before, that our systems of justice, those things that exist, are so important, and they are held together by a very delicate balance. Do you think that this is a dangerous road to go down? Now I'm seeing his attorneys and everyone else now saying the same thing, putting into question if our justice systems have character and integrity. You don't think that that's problematic, or?
Yeah, of course it is. I think generally speaking, people do. I mean, one of the reasons the system has worked is people generally have had faith in the on average, obviously, but on average, people have had faith in the
even when you're wrong,
right?
We believe in that.
And kind of this rash of conspiratorial, which seems to be growing, undermines that, so that you don't know what you can believe, who to believe. And I think it's destabilizing in a certain sense. Yeah, I do. And I think it's really sad that a guy like this, who's really just self-serving, in order to kind of serve himself, he's doing this. It speaks to who he is and who he is as a person.
And so that makes me nervous because this is another institution. Before, it was elections. Now it's our highest security in the land.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how this segment of the population was all for the police, all for,
and now
yeah,
that's exactly what
it's just like, okay, where's the hypocrisy here? So
I'm going to counter that a little bit here.
All right.
That section of the population has never been all for the FBI, all for federal and that kind of, and those are the people doing these investigations. Right. They are in support of like state and local.
Okay.
I can't.
Are they? I mean, because
now you've got like Tucker Carlson, who I can't stand either.
Oh, me neither.
Oh, he's my favorite.
He's basically saying the Watergate thing was all a setup. I mean, this is like, everybody's testified at trial or at hearings. This was a real thing, and he's even trying to undermine that like Watergate didn't really happen. It's like, come on.
Well, the thing that I think is dangerous is that when you recognize that there are two courts that you're appealing to. And so this information is all being done in the court of public opinion. And so I think Judge Deary is saying, hey, you've been out there talking to that court, come in and talk under oath in this court. But I think that when you begin to pollute the waters, it creates a scenario where all of us have some element of apprehension,
suspicion.
Say it again. Suspicion.
Now you're gonna mess me up, man.
Linguistically, I usually do quite well, but we all have that bit of apprehension. And when you speak or you stoke that flame, I think it becomes dangerous, because if he can do it, other people are saying, hey, if he can do it, then I can do it. And then we become more inclined to really try to see what we can get rid of instead of being our best selves. And I don't know what you think, Mr. Conspiracy Theory, because all young people, I don't want to say all young people are, but they think a little bit different than the more mature people like Mark.
I think that a lot of
elder.
People,
I'm not going to say I'm more mature than Jonathan. I'm older, so
I think a lot of people my age and in my generation are just cynical all the time.
I've noticed that. I'm sad. It makes me sad, frankly, that I've seen that with a couple of my younger children. Very cynical about the world, and the world's against them, basically.
Black America don't trust nothing. I'm telling you, we ain't trusted none of it.
But kids that age should be optimistic about the world, not cynical about the world.
And that's really my
sad
thought. When I left my parents' home, I was very optimistic about the world, even considering and understanding all of the issues that were going on. And so it's sad to see this. I want to end.
This is where I think a lot of like social media and then media in general, who's very kind of, again, there's no objectivity anymore. There's not even an attempt to be objective in the media anymore. It's just propaganda for one side or the other.
Yes.
And it creates that, I think, cynicism in the world, basically.
Yep. All right. In this last couple of seconds that we got here, I just want to talk the Little Mermaid, this beautiful story about the woman who lives under the sea. We've seen the story before. They're coming out with a new creation of the story, and they chose Chloe Bailey of her sister. I can't remember her sister's name, but she and her sister, they sing together. They have an R&B group that sings together, and they do quite well. Beautiful girls. She has been cast as Ariel for the Little Mermaid, and this has, people are in an uproar.
Who's in an uproar?
The world is,
because no one cares about this. Come on.
One of the people, when I was looking at one of the comments, they said, Ariel sure got a dark tan underneath the sea. How did that happen? And many people believe that she should have been a white girl portraying this role. All of the other depictions of her have all been of white women. But I saw a video, it was a TikTok video of a young 3-year-old girl who was watching this, and her mother was recording her reaction when they were showing the trailer. When she came up, she was like, she's black girl magic, mommy. She's beautiful. She's beautiful. Which gives us the understanding that we got to get away from all of this. She should be black. She should be white. The fact of the matter is that representation matters. And so kudos to Disney or whoever, film star, or whatever, who put it together. We're going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem, and you're back with United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. I'm here in the studio with the guys that I love to kick it with about real issues all the time. That is Mark Bassett, my co-host, and we got John B. in the place to be on the board. And so we're going to get to our conversation for today. Mark made the statement that no one in the real world cares about Ariel if she's black or white, but it matters to me, okay? Because I think that representation matters. But anyways, we're going to talk a little bit. I wanted to have this conversation. I took my mom to see a movie that came out on last week. The name of the movie was The Woman King. And it brought to the forefront a conversation that we had as it relates to in our family. It stirred a lot of conversation about the role of Africans played in the slave trade. And we've seen for decades the slave trade, or the chattel is what they call it, chattel trade here in the United States. And many of us would have, if without any further history, would have just kind of thought that this is how the slave trade happens. The white man went over with his shotguns, pointed them at the Indians who were running around, or not the Indians. Excuse me, I'm all kinds of wrong.
Yeah.
Excuse me, indigenous
That was
people.
Before,
But that was before.
that was
Yeah,
a couple hundred
when we
years
first got
before.
here, right? But they went over and they were chasing people with loincloths and this whole thing. What I thought was about this particular movie that was really interesting is that it gives a more real historical perspective. Of course, Hollywood is always going to take their opportunity to give to put their spin on things, but there was such a real depiction in this particular movie. And you guys haven't seen this movie. All right, so I'm going to challenge you guys to see it. I think it's going to be a good movie. I even buy your ticket, buddy.
Wow.
But I think it's a good movie.
Boys' night out.
Absolutely. we keep saying that and we never get there.
Come on. All right. This coming week, boys' night out.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right.
So the movie, in this new movie, Viola Davis is causing a stir. The conversations about the slave trade, real details of how the Africans played a key role in the enslavement of the slaves that came into the United States through the transatlantic slave trade. And that's a part of the conversation that we never talk about. We talk about slavery here in the country. We talk about coming across the Atlantic, but we don't talk about what took place in order for those slaves to happen. And so I just wanted to really just kind of have this conversation, because there's some questions that I think that I would like to have and get some insight on. Does knowing this type of information, and this is something I've known for a long time, but seeing the depiction of it got me mad all over again.
Got you mad?
Yeah, I got upset all over again for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Why?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you why I was upset. Well, it starts off by showing, and it doesn't show it, but it kind of addresses the fact that initially it was the Portuguese. They just kind of went around the Cape, and the Portuguese on the western side of Africa came in. And they ran into this new land because they were sailors and sailing, and they saw these black civilizations. And what I loved was the depiction of how they showed that there was running water, and they weren't running in loincloths, but these people were highly civilized. But they were coming in, and when they came, they noticed that they had a great ability to withstand. They were strong, those types of things. So they were looking for labor for the new world. And so initially they came in with their muskets, trying to get them, but it was impossible in the terrain. Right. And anybody who understands Senegal and the Senegalese, that is kind of what happened with the Portuguese coming in. They tried to enslave them, but because of their knowledge of the waters and the terrain, it did not work very well. But then it showed how they began to work with them and colonize the particular area. And colonization is always a problem for me because whenever I think about it, I think about people who have come to this country for the purpose of no persecution, for the purpose of being free, for the purpose of having liberties, and then to subject the people once they got here to things that they were tyrannies that they were running from. So that's a whole nother issue.
Yep.
So they began this relationship, Mark, in the movie that is displayed in a way that we've never seen this depicted in modern cinema. And they were showing how they began to have a partnership in this relationship.
Business relationship.
Yeah. And so it was a business relationship.
Right.
They were doing palm oil, which is something that they still do to this day in this particular region. And they were exchanging palm oil. They were coming in with, I think it was alcohol and tobacco, things that were not produced in that region. And they began to exchange. And so one of the things was they began to say, hey, we need laborers. And so the slaves owners that were there, which were, I think, the Oyo people at the time, they were giving them their slaves that
they had slaves themselves.
Yeah, they had captured, fighting other tribes.
Yep.
And they were using them to work their progress in the fields and things. And they were doing that trade. And so those slaves that were being sold were then put on ships and taken across and became a part of the population, which we now, the Indies, West Indies, so that's Jamaica and Barbados and all those islands eventually in the United States, Maryland, that particular area. We understand the story of slavery here in the U.S. But that was an interesting piece. And my question was, understanding that type of the process of slavery, does it change how we view slavery as a people here today?
For me, are you asking?
Yeah.
For me personally, no, not really, because I knew that part of it.
Okay.
To some extent. I just view it as kind of, and again, I may be stepping into it a little bit. Slavery is
Go ahead, just step into it, Mark. Get your feet
the reality
nice and
is
greasy.
slavery has existed since the beginning of time.
Absolutely.
And it's transpired by people conquering other people, and people's view of humanity has evolved over time, where they were just resources to now I think we have a higher view of humanity. But slavery, people would argue, even still exists today. I mean, the West is accusing China of enslaving the Uyghurs in the Western China and using them as, in essence, slave labor. So for me, it really doesn't. I've always felt like, okay, yes, obviously slavery is a horrible thing. Yes, it's, this country is stained with it. But the reality is it existed before that, and it's existed since that time. And it's just an unfortunate part or a horrible part of the history of this planet or this world, or, it is what it is. And it's so.
But I thought it was interesting. And so what was also cool is when we look at this particular story and we're talking about how this took place, I thought about the things that motivate us as people, to see as the tribes. Now, the tribe that is, I guess, the winning tribe, if there was a big tribe, were the Dahomey people. And in the story, the Dahomey people, which is the name that they were, the tribe that they were, this is a real tribe that really existed. I remember I did a class at Michigan State. Oh Lord, this was back when we were still in the 1900s, which sounds so long ago. I think it was like 94 or something like that, 95. And I did a class. It was study of African civilizations, and we were talking about the Dahomey people. So as we were looking at that and we were going through this, and they were talking about the Agoji, it was really quite interesting. First of all, to see the depiction of real Black history on cinema in the United States in a real way was quite exciting. But the Agoji women, and they were considered the Amazon. If you remember, in a lot of Greek mythology, they would have the Amazonians, right? So these Agoji women were the Brazilians, and many of the Europeans came in and they referred to them as Amazons because these were strong women. They had been through a series of tests and challenges so that they could, be averse to being cut and the pain. But these women were actually used for the purpose of attacking other villages and other tribes to get slaves as a part of the slave trade. That was a piece of the story that, when expressed, and they didn't express it that way. They took a little cinema, because that meant that our star woman in this, what's her name? What's the star name of this? Viola Davis.
Yep.
She would have been a slave trader. But the reality of it is that these Agoji women were an elite class of soldiers that were specifically designed to go in to raid villages for the purpose of the slave trade. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this is the depiction. To know this is one thing, but to see the depiction of something like that was so very different. Now, the other thing that I thought was interesting, that these were women warriors. And we don't often see women as strong, powerful. We saw that Black Panther broke all kind of box office numbers as a Black superhero. But here we have Viola Davis, who was she was Academy Award winner for The Help, and she's been nominated for other things, coming in a very different role and being a superhero, if you would. But the fact of the matter of what they're displaying about the Agojis being those who are like, hey, we're going to stop the war, we're going to stop slavery, was very different in reality, because they were the ones that were actually perpetuating this thing. Now, when we look at this and we see how the Dahomies were, like I said, palm oil and slave trade, where slave trade was the way that their king would be able to get gold. He got tobacco. Does this make, and I know you said it doesn't change for you, Mark, but for me, for some reason, it doesn't change the atrocity of slavery. But for some reason in my mind, I ask myself, how could a people get to a place that they would enslave themselves in such a, but I guess it's probably because
a different tribe. I mean, they're not enslaving themselves.
It's a different tribe. And not only that, but I guess you would think that slavery, as you said, slavery has existed
since the beginning of time.
Yeah. And the thing that I think that we have to take in line, and I guess if I would have thought this through really in my head, I would have come to a different conclusion. But when we look at it, the type of slavery that took place was different when it comes to the transatlantic slave trade versus any of the other types of trade. When was it the Italians that were coming over to the U.S. as indentured servants?
The Irish.
The Irish.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when the Irish.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You finish your thought.
So when the Irish came over, and there was another group of people too. If I'm not mistaken, there was a number of Italians.
Well, that was the whole Middle Ages is filled with indentured servants.
That were coming over. That would have been considered a type of slavery. But
look at the Middle Age monarchs. I mean, basically, their fiefdom were in essence slaves.
So my thing is, what makes this type of slavery? What took place that made this type of slavery so different than all the other forms that existed?
Was it? I would argue it was the same. To me, it's just another example of slavery.
Really?
Yes. Now, I'm not obviously Black, and so and I tend to be very kind of practical and analytical.
And I get that.
And so this is, again, this is one tribe capturing another tribe, viewing them as a commodity and selling them for a financial gain.
And I get that. And I think that in that essence, it is very much the same. And even if you saw, when we see the movie, and you see them, they were used as laborers in their fields, as servants to assist the king and other individuals. But the atrocity of slavery, and this is the thing that is so different. You don't see that same level of atrocity. You don't even see that same thing with the Irish that came over here to the degree of what we would consider modern slavery in America. Yeah.
I've just been, it's a little bit off, but I think that it might tie in here. Here's a thesis for you. I haven't thought through it completely, but
okay.
That's what
we tend to do that
going
here.
Through my mind for the past 3 or 4 minutes here. What do you think about this idea?
Okay.
African tribes found things that divided them other than race, because they all looked alike. They found things that divided them. They formed their tribes, and that's the other. Let's treat them as the other. And now and back then, when it became more racially motivated, do you think that's when the common idea of the atrocity of slavery got involved?
You're a smart kid.
He is a smart kid. I've always been impressed by Jonathan.
Jonathan is. I told you that from the very beginning, John. I like the way you think, and so the other became a different type of other.
It's really easy to identify that other.
Yeah.
Black and white.
And so I guess we understood that in terms of how it played out in terms of the fabric of how we ended up with races in America. Okay. And so I guess if you were to look at it as that way, and to also begin to think that for the first time, many people had not seen people of this dark skin color,
and a lot of people of color hadn't seen white people.
The opposite. So,
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm good enough to trade with what still brings it, but I guess you know what? If these are the worst of your worst, and we're trading, then I can do with them as I please,
Sure.
and they don't matter. But anyway, so as we get through this piece, and what I really wanted to really talk about and shed some light on, as we look at how these Africans have played a role in the African slave trade, I began to think about how Africans that come over now today, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there is a very distinct difference between what we refer to as African Americans. I refer to us that are here and were born on this soil as blacks, and Africans that come to this country from Africa now. Have you guys noticed that difference? Have you noticed that there is a divide?
Beside the accent?
No. Other than the
There
divide,
is a cultural difference.
but there is a huge divide, and I'm not even talking about culture, but in this movie, there was one point, and I'm going to come back to what we're talking about. Yep. In the movie, there was this one point where the lead character stated, and we're going to get to some of these comments. The lead character stated that she was trying to get the king Gezo to stop, and this King Gezo was a real king of the Dahomey people, to stop trading his slaves, which were Africans that he had acquired through war, to the Portuguese and to the French and to the Europeans and the Americans, because of the treatment of their slaves. They noticed a change in the treatment and how he was being treated versus the other people. And he goes, well, I don't care. They're not my people.
Right.
And she says, every African is my people. Such a powerful moment to me. And I think that when we look at this and we be able to talk from this, from everyone has seen this, is going to be very important. But it brings me back to this place. When I look at blacks who are in America, when we look at Africa, we look at them as our brothers. When they look at us, they look at us as others.
Right, because you're an American.
And exactly.
Right.
And so even though we recognize that our history or our legacies or our ancestries are derived from what we call the motherland, they don't see it as such, and they view us very differently than they view other African people. Now, there are some that are enlightened and understand the pathway, but it's because of colonization of even Africa.
I think that would be true for like Irish people or Italian people today.
But no, I think Irish, it's different.
I don't know. I don't think they.
You don't think so?
I think they view someone of Italian descent that's lived in the U.S. for 200 years.
I guess you are American.
You're an American. You're not Italian. In their mind, it's interesting because Italian Americans like to have a connection back to
home,
just like Irish do.
Well,
just like African Americans do. But I don't think the reverse exists. They don't view Americans that have, Irish of descent that have been here 150 years as Irish people.
I think that's interesting, actually. Like, we're veering off just a little bit.
But I think this is good. Go ahead.
As an American, you maintain that, hey, here's where my bloodline comes from. So I'm English German. But if a family moved from Germany to France and stayed there for 100 years,
they're still Germans.
They would be French.
Really?
They wouldn't look back to Germany as back home.
Did you say for 100 years?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a difference.
Yeah. But in America, we're the great melting pot, right? But we still maintain that connection and we maintain that identity, even if that identity doesn't maintain us.
And I think that's because, when you're only working with 200 years, you're kind of the young kid on the scene. Yeah. You got to have a point of reference from which you've come. Destiny Finley, slavery is slavery, but transatlantic slave trade was different because of the mass movement of people, and the brutality of the transatlantic slave trade made it different. You're absolutely right. It is estimated.
Was it really more brutal than, say, the Egyptians enslaving the Israelites?
No, absolutely. It's because of the process or the journey of the trade as well.
The journey.
So when you look at, you guys, I'm gonna have to take you guys on a cultural experience here.
Okay.
I've been all over the place, but there used to be an exhibit at the Charles Wright Museum in Detroit, and it showed the inside of a slave ship, and it showed how, I mean, the close proximity and really they were laying on top of one another.
Yeah, I've seen those pictures.
And the feces, and this is horrific.
Yep.
Because it was about packing the ship and putting as many people in there as possible. So something that was very common, such as scurvy and other issues, so many people died in transition, right?
Yep.
They still have it. Okay, so thank you very much, Stacy Crosby. She said they still have that exhibit. I think it'll be a great thing for us to take in and to take a look. But so many people died in transition. So many people died. There's a whole story, and whether the truth of this or not, pushing slaves off ship to, in certain storms to lighten the ship even were a part of it.
That makes sense.
I mean, they're cargo that you can, if you're going to get rid of, you're not going to get rid of your gold and your tobacco.
Yep.
Let's throw the ships over that were the least. I mean, so those things. So there is estimations. And I was looking at this. There's an estimated, they're saying anywhere from 4 and some numbers as high as 200 million. That's really high. But in terms of slavery itself, I could see 200 million people during the course of 400 years dying. But during the transatlantic slave trade, anywhere from 4 to 60 million people dying in the transition period. And so when we look at this, and I say, and I guess if you don't know where people are going, you really don't understand. And that is one of the
I don't think they cared.
Well, I think that this is the thing.
Ultimately, they didn't care.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah.
And that point was brought. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You don't care if they're not a part of your people, if they're not a part of your bloodline or whatever you believe. But the warrior that is in here, and I think Naniska is the name that she had. She was actually captured. And so she experienced
this is the Viola Davis character?
Yes, this is Viola Davis's character.
Okay.
So she had the opportunity to actually experience what it was like to be enslaved by the colonizers. And so that was the thing that made a difference, because she saw the brutality, she saw the raping, she saw the harsh treatment, the punishing, the lashing, and the whipping. And so she went back, and that was the thing that changed her mind and her perspective on the whole process. Right. And so I just thought that this was an interesting thing that we were having conversations about this week with my family. And I would like for you all, those of you who are listening, when you hear this, go out and watch this. It is The Woman King, and it talks about the ancient civilization of the Dahomey people. And probably from about 1680 to about the late 1850s is during the time when these Agoji women, who were warriors, powerful women that protected the king and built the most one of the richest civilization in Western Africa. They were there doing this war, selling slaves, selling tribes, making a kingdom out of this particular thing. It was an interesting perspective for me. It lets me know that nobody's hands are clean in the process. And I just want us to think, as we begin to work, we have these interesting conversations, that it's important for you to get out, to learn your history. There are museums and places that you can go. If you're here in Michigan, there's the Charles Wright Museum. I know that there are amazing places in Chicago as well. One right on the Magnificent Mile. I can't remember the name, but this is a part of our American history. Most powerful movie. Mother Walker thought she was going to go out and become a warrior king. Thank you guys for tuning into this conversation. As usual, we love you. God bless you all. Grace and peace.